Yeah, go ahead, press it.
Like 100 years ago, yeah.
Hold on.
We're here. I think we're ready to get going. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. I would like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis people. We appreciate your time and interest as the Premier shares highlights from his recent trade mission to China with the Prime Minister and the important outcome of that mission for Saskatchewan canola producers and also pulse producers. We will also hear from some of the industry representatives about the impact of this announcement. In August, industry representatives joined Premier in this very building to discuss the impact of China's tariffs on Canadian canola. Some of you are in this room today. That time was spent understanding how Saskatchewan could best respond by gathering information from the industry, listening closely, and working together on a path forward. Since then, we've made significant progress through intentional engagement with the federal government and by focusing on strengthening relationships between Saskatchewan and China and Canada and China. In September, Premier Moe, along with Federal Parliamentary Secretary Cody Blois, led a delegation to China to advocate for Saskatchewan's interests. This mission was a crucial step in strengthening our relationship between Canada and China. Today, we will hear from Minister Keating, Minister of Trade and Export Development, Dean Roberts, Board Chair of Sask Oilseeds, Stuart Lawrence, Board Chair for Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, and of course, Premier Moe. Minister Keating, I will now turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Minister Merritt, Premier Moe, Minister Merritt, industry leaders, and special guests. It really is a pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Ministry of Trade and Export Development and certainly the Government of Saskatchewan, especially as we mark a major milestone in the trade relationship between Canada and China. Our government has been hard at work navigating geopolitical challenges from our largest trading partners, fortunately for the last several months. And all of you in this room really are no stranger to the impacts that China tariffs have had on our canola, on our field pea industry, and so many other sectors of agriculture. And I want to thank all of you for standing alongside us and sharing your concerns when it really mattered the most. Premier Scott Moe's foresight and leadership saw him travel to China twice in the last few months. His mission in September was the first time that a Canadian premier had conducted a trade mission in China in over 6 years. Our premier's commitment to a timely resolution of these tariffs, paired with the adaptability of our Trade and Investment Office network, has allowed us to stay resilient. And then, combine that with you, who stood together with provincial and federal leaders, has resulted in us being here today to celebrate a preliminary agreement on tariffs between Canada and China. Your Premier has worked very hard over the last number of months to get where we are today. And we're going to continue to engage with Canada and China to ensure that we build on the preliminary agreement for lasting and broader access in the ag sector. So just yesterday, China opened up its borders to Canadian beef, and that focus on agriculture has been our priority in the last 18 months. So this is going to include a lot more work with China to increase market access for other sectors like canola oil and pork, and certainly to ensure that we have long-term access for all Canadian products. But this work is far from over. But today, we are very proud of the progress that has been made. And Saskatchewan people and communities have always been known for their grit and their resilience when times get tough. And this is just really one more example of why we're known for that reputation. So with that, thank you to our Premier and to you, our producers and industry partners, as we look for even more trade success to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Keating. Next, I would like to welcome Dean Roberts to share a few remarks on behalf of Sask Oilseeds.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dean Roberts, and I'm a farmer from West Central Saskatchewan. I am also the board chair for Saskatchewan Oilseeds. It's great to be here today alongside Premier Scott Moe, our colleagues from Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, and partners from across the agriculture sector. We welcome the recent announcement of tariff reductions to 15% on Canadian canola seed and the removal of tariffs on meal exports to China until at least the end of the year. This is significant progress towards restoring market access for both seed and meal in our second largest export market. In 2024, canola trade with China was valued at approximately $5 billion. In 2025, that value is expected to have fallen to less than half of that amount due to these punishing duties. The tariffs imposed by China effectively shut Canadian canola out of this important market. The closure of the Chinese market caused real uncertainty at the farm gate. Volatile prices, reduced marketing options, coupled with high input prices, resulted in negative pressure on farm profitability. Unfortunately, there is a lot of the 2025 canola crop sitting in farmers' bins across Saskatchewan. With the 2026 growing season just months away, producers need predictable, rules-based access to global markets. The announcement on Friday could not have come at a better time. Along with our partners in the provincial government, we will continue to build on this development, working toward permanent and complete tariff relief, including for canola oil, which remains a gap. Achieving this will help restore stability and confidence for farmers and the broader canola industry. From the outset, we've been clear that this is fundamentally a political issue requiring a political solution, one that must be negotiated at the highest levels between the Government of Canada and the Government of China. We appreciate the efforts of Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Government of Canada, including Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister Heath MacDonald and MP Cody Blois, for their action on this file. I would also like to take a moment to provide a heartfelt thank you to the Premier of Saskatchewan for his leadership and advocacy on the file. Without Premier Moe as our champion, we might still be waiting for action. He advocated tirelessly with the federal government and even scheduled his own mission to China back in September to open some doors and build the foundation for this important negotiation to take place. Thank you, Premier. Maintaining open and stable market access for canola is a top priority for our industry and for farmers. We will continue working with industry partners, with provincial leaders like Premier Moe, and with the federal government to ensure predictable access and a lasting resolution to this dispute. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I'll now ask Stuart Lawrence as our next speaker on behalf of the Saskatchewan Pulse Growers.
Thank you for the introduction, Minister Merritt. It is my great pleasure to be here today to make some comments on behalf of Saskatchewan Pulse Growers and the Canadian pulse industry. Friday's announcement on the elimination of the 100% tariffs on Canadian peas was very positive news for pea growers here in Saskatchewan and across Canada. For many years, China has been Canada's largest market for peas, with Canadian exports of $3.7 billion from 2019 to 2024. Canadian farmers and exporters have worked together to develop this market over the past 30 years. But China's introduction of 100% tariffs in March of 2025 effectively shut off pea exports from Canada. Over the past 10 months, prices of yellow peas were down as much as 43% from the early March 2025 levels. Led by Pulse Canada, we were on the ground in China within 10 days of the March 2025 tariff announcement, meeting with customers and industry associations to maintain strong relationships with the industry there. This work continued with several in-person engagements over the past 10 months. Customers in China have told us that they have a strong preference for Canadian peas, but 100% tariffs were prohibitive for trade. We expect that the removal of tariffs will resume trade and restore access for Canadian peas. Our ask was that governments find a way to have the 100% tariff removed. We would like to recognize Prime Minister Carney, Premier Moe, federal and provincial ministers, and government officials in securing this important outcome. I would also like to recognize the ongoing and persistent work of our national association, Pulse Canada, to help restore access. It is reassuring to see the high level of collaboration between the federal and provincial governments, as well as industry, to deliver important results for farmers. In particular, I want to recognize your leadership, Premier Moe, with your early engagement right from the start of this tariff dispute, to your timely trip to China in September, and your role last week in Beijing. Your leadership has played an important role in helping to secure this agreement for Canada. There is no doubt that the Government of Saskatchewan played an essential role in securing this important agreement for farmers. We look forward to working closely with governments to ensure access to this important market continues beyond 2026. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stu. Next, I would like to invite Premier Moe to provide an overview of what was accomplished on the follow-up minister's mission last week alongside with Prime Minister Carney. Premier Moe.
Thank you very much, Dave. And President, I see you're off to your first month of work here at our beloved university as well. And you know, I can't help but be reminded as I attended this very college here 30 years ago. We had our 30-year anniversary while we were in Beijing, actually, meeting with the Chinese government on these canola and pulse tariffs, as well as beef and pork. And it very much is about, you know, some of those industries started with researchers at this very institute, and I think of Al Slinkard and so many others that you know, the pulse industry really wouldn't exist without some of the research and the work that happened right here, not in this building, but some of it did eventually happen in this building, but certainly the research that happened at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm my communications team's worst nightmare because I have a few notes that I made when we were in the meeting in Beijing. I have a few notes I made this morning, and I was handed a few other notes on the way in here, and I'll maybe just mix them together. Give us a little overview of, you know, what's happened over the last number of months and ultimately culminated in the announcement that was made this past week, and maybe what that means to the ag industry, and more broadly what it means to the Canadian economy and where we go from here with our trade relationship. And it's important to focus on the trade relationship with a country like China, but also other significant markets around the world as well. And one of the largest markets is just simply to the south of us. But this engagement that Saskatchewan has led, yes, September 2019 was a pivotal point in the relationship and the conversation around canola and pulse tariffs with the country of China, between the country of China and Canada. And that's really where the tone changed. But that face-to-face engagement had been happening for years prior to that. Case in point, their Ministry of Commerce, their Minister of Commerce, Minister Wang, who used to be the governor of the province of Heilongjiang in China. We had visited him in 2019 as a Saskatchewan delegation, where he had hosted us for a state supper and engaged with him with a air drill that was being built. It was an 8-foot air drill that was being built here in Saskatoon and was being sold in that particular province to some community farms. Sorry, that was in India, but we were in the Heilongjiang province. The air drill story is from India. I'm in the wrong country. But we'd engaged with him. He went on to become the Minister of Commerce within the national government in China. That's what 3 hours sleep does to you. I'm getting my countries mixed up. And he very much remembered that evening that we had that particular supper so many years ago. September, when we had visited as well, the first premier's visit in 6 years to the country of China, first prime minister visit just this last week in 9 years by a Canadian prime minister. But the tone started to change in September, and I was very thankful that Cody Blois, the parliamentary secretary to the prime minister, joined us on that particular mission. And he was able to provide that continuity in those negotiations throughout the last number of months, and was in China on numerous occasions negotiating with Minister Wong and his team to get us to where we ultimately were able to get to. And where did we get to is a 15% tariff on canola seed. That's over $2 billion of canola seed that we were able to export to China in just the last year. Canola meal, pulse crops will be brought down to zero, as well as seafood, but seafood's not as important to Saskatchewan. However, Atlantic Canadian premiers have been reaching out, very appreciative of the efforts, because it is important to those Atlantic provinces. Down to zero for those items. What that means, the canola meal, moving down to zero, is that our domestic crush is going to continue. They have the outlet for the canola meal, and they'll continue to crush oil. The obvious missing element in our in the decision that China had made is on canola oil. However, canola oil will move to many other markets around the world, and meal was the important piece for us to get in order to have that domestic crush capacity keep up, so that we can keep the volumes up, so that we can actually start to move some of the product that we have here in Canada. This is, make no mistake, this is a positive agreement for not only the Saskatchewan agriculture industry. It's really positive for the Saskatchewan agriculture industry, as we produce about 55% of the canola production in this nation, and a higher portion of the pulse crops in this nation. So it's very, very significant to our Saskatchewan farmers, to all of our exporters, to the processing industry here in the province. But it's also important to the Canadian agriculture industry, and I would say equally important to the Canadian economy. This is an industry, canola alone employs over 200,000 people across Canada, and is a $44 billion industry. This is a very, very significant decision that was made by the country of China. And I would just echo some of the comments earlier. Thanks, yes, to our federal ag minister, Heath MacDonald was there. Tim Hodgson was there, the energy and resource minister, and I'll get to that maybe just in my closing comments. Melanie Jolie was there, Anita Anand was there. As well as Cody Blois was there, who, as I said, has really been the continuity for these negotiations throughout. That's a significant delegation, and I had made on my notes that particular day in Beijing. That's a significant delegation, and that isn't lost on markets where we are selling our wares, so to speak, or where we are marketing our products. When you show your face in markets like that, they most certainly are going to take note of that. So that was a credit to the federal government, and you haven't heard me saying that a lot in the last decade, but I will say it here today. And a credit to Prime Minister Carney for engaging earnestly with at all levels of the Chinese government, and it certainly has paid off for our ag industry and our Canadian economy. A couple of points I want to make here, and I'll make these in the national media later today. This essentially gets us back to, people will say, what does this mean to the Canada's trade relationship with China? From an agricultural perspective, this gets us back to where we were a year ago. No more, no less, really. We had slight tariffs on some of our ag products a year ago. We have slight tariffs on some of our ag products here today. What this is going to allow us to do is to get back to flowing our canola and pulse stocks to China, as well as many other countries around the world. Some folks will say from time to time that we are too dependent on whether it be the American market or the Chinese market when it comes to selling our agricultural goods. That may be true. However, they are the largest markets in the world, and in the case of China, it's a premium market. They pay more, and we worked hard to get into that market to diversify some of our agricultural products away from our areas, not just the United States of America, but from other areas in the world. And as everyone knows in this industry, and in particular if you attend classes in this building, you'll be fully aware that the production values in our farms has gone up significantly since I attended in this building 30 years ago. And so we have more to sell. And so certainly we are in the Chinese marketplace for a reason. It's one of the largest markets in the world, and they pay more. It's a premium market, and we're going to continue to make efforts to access that market. However, there are additional opportunities for us as we look ahead in the renewable and the biofuel space for canola specifically. So what this does is brings us back to the trade relationship that we had last year and have had for the last number of years in China. Where are the opportunities in this particular agreement? And I would point you to some of the memorandums. I think there were 6 of them that were signed that day as well. And some of the discussion that we had with respect to graduate students and the opportunities for research in China as well as Chinese students here. But the opportunities as we look ahead are in energy, most certainly in energy. And that is a positive, again, not only for the Saskatchewan economy, but it certainly is a very much provides us with an opportunity to have a very positive impact on the Canadian economy. And when we talk about access to our West Coast when it comes to traditional oil, traditional energy products such as oil and gas, or the Port of Churchill, or when you hear the Canadian discussion with respect to other energy sources, rare earth elements and opportunities and partnerships that we may have with countries around the world, that is where the opportunity lies, not just in China, but with other Asian countries as well, of which this particular agreement will be a bellwether for and will provide and create additional access points into those other markets. I'll also comment on the EVs because it'll come up in the questions, I'm sure, at the end. There's 49,000 EVs from China that will be made available in Canada at a 6.1% tariff rate, as opposed to the 100% tariff rate that was in place. That represents about 3% of the market share for EV cars in Canada. And certainly, I think when you trade that off with a $44 billion canola industry, plus the pulse industry, plus the beef announcements that were made today, plus the opportunities that we have in energy trade into the future, as well as some wood MOU that was signed on forestry products as well. Most certainly this is a beneficial deal, and I would say a beneficial opportunity for Canada as we look to the future trade with a country like China. Last but not least is over the course of the past year, and those in the exporting industry will be aware of this, is when you are under trade duress or things aren't going well with a country like China, you have no dispute mechanisms. You have no dispute mechanisms when there are boats that are waiting in port and are unable to unload. What this agreement does is reenacts all of those dispute mechanisms that were in place before. And now when Canadian businesses have a challenge, a trade challenge, have some product that isn't available or is having some troubles in the regulatory space in China, all of those dispute mechanisms are back in place. And so the broader agreement with the removal of the tariffs on canola and pulses is huge for the Saskatchewan economy, the ag economy, more broadly, the economy across Canada. The additional announcement through the discussions that continued after the time that we were there, resulting in the removal of tariffs on beef, is also positive for the Saskatchewan ag economy, the Canadian ag economy, and more broadly our economy. The dispute mechanisms that are back in place are imperative for us to do business, not only in China, but in the entirety of the Asian region moving forward as well. And so I would say that this agreement with China is one of the strongest agreements that I have seen in my elected time. And I would say in the time that I have spent in China over the course of the last decade, that the tone of the conversation has certainly changed. It's certainly changed to not only return us to a place where we are able to access China, the largest market, and in many cases a premium market for our agricultural products, but also looking to expand some of that trade into some of the other products that we have available here as well. And I think that kind of blends together the 3 batches of notes that I have here and didn't really follow any of them. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Dave. I would just close with this, saying a thank you to all of the organizations involved, whether it be the university here that's intricately involved in these international relations, whether it be SARM and organizations associated with SARM, but certainly the producer groups, the export groups that are directly impacted by what's occurred here over the course of the past year. And Saskatchewan, unfortunately, because often ag products are somewhat of the target because we do so much business around the world. This province exports to over 160 countries around the world. I think there's 190 total, so we have 30 left. But say thank you to you, and through you to all of your members across the province. We do have experience in this. However, what we experienced this past year was certainly a larger tariff than we've seen in the past, and the breadth on the number of products that it was being charged to was much more severe than anything that we have seen in the past. And we're able to find a resolution, and I would say a resolution more quickly than we were able to in the past. And I would just close with a note of appreciation again for Prime Minister Carney. Not only in these discussions here, but with making an effort that has been not made in at least a decade in this nation to raise Canada's credibility in the international sphere. And for a province that does business with 160 countries around the world, for a province that is among, if not the top exporter per capita of every province and every state in North America, that international credibility of our nation and our province is absolutely imperative for us to operate in these premium markets, markets like China. So thank you to the federal government, and again, it's going to catch the media off guard, but I mean it. This is an important engagement, and they're making important efforts that matter to the industries that are creating wealth and jobs in this province. Thank you to our associations and the exporters, and thank you to everyone here today.
Thank you, Premier. Just before I invite everybody back up to the podium, I just want to say this on behalf of the farming community as well. The work and the hard work that our Premier's put into this. I don't know if many of you realize, but he just landed here about 5 or 6 hours ago after a 15-hour time change, and still wanted to make sure that he was present here to do this. But the work that this man does for the province and for the people of this province is absolutely incredible. On behalf of all the farmers and ranchers, as the Minister of Agriculture, Premier, thank you so very much for everything you have done for this great province. I now want to invite all our speakers back up to the podium, and we will open the floor for questions. So I'll invite all the 4 speakers up here. And who do you want to talk to first? Premier? Okay.
Please direct your question of who you like to answer.
I'll give you the mic here, Premier.
We'll pull you guys in, so don't get too comfortable. Yell 'em out, I can hear. I think I can. Oh.
What assurance do farmers and exporters have that there's a long-term plan for after this?
Well, the seed tariffs, and I'm just going off memory here, the seed tariffs that were down to 9 and 6, so a total of 15%, which is in the realm of where we were before, maybe slightly higher. Those are on, I would think indefinitely. The agreement itself, I believe, is a 3 or 5 year agreement. And the canola meal, as well as the pulses, are to zero tariff until at least the end of the year. All of it will begin on March the 1st. But listen, there are no assurances in this world. In particular, when you look at what has been happening in the trade space over the course of the past year. We have our largest trading partner and one of the largest traders on earth, the United States of America, that is resetting their trade relationship not only with Canada, but with many other countries around the world all at the same time. And so the time of multilateral trade agreements between multiple countries on multiple products being negotiated over the course of years, and then all of those countries signing on to this multilateral agreed upon trade relationship on so many sectors, I don't know if that time is available to us in the foreseeable future. What you will see are much smaller agreements and arrangements between countries in specific sectors. And that is why that international engagement is so important. That is why Saskatchewan has been in each and all of these international markets of importance with our trade offices. These two ministers, among many others, and associations, and I think in fairness, the associations are becoming even more active in the last number of months than maybe they were 10 years ago. But they certainly have been at the forefront of pushing our presence from a provincial perspective and from a Canadian perspective into these markets that mean so much to our industries, and ultimately, at the end of the day, are creating jobs, creating employment, and creating wealth for Saskatchewan and Canadian families. And so it is I think that engagement between associations, multiple levels of government, exporters, and others, that presence in those foreign markets that are of particular importance to us, market-based importance, economic importance, trade-related importance. I think our presence and our engagement in those markets is going to be more important in the months ahead than it has ever been in the months behind us. And so I, again, just thank the folks here with the various associations that we have. And more broadly, thank and have an ask for the associations, not just in the ag industry, but the energy industry and other industries that are creating jobs and wealth in this province and across the nation, is we need to be in those markets. And we need to be standing shoulder to shoulder with our various governments, creating and fostering those trade relations. It is going to be even more important, as I said, in the years ahead than it has been in the years gone by. And we had the canola and I believe the Pulse Canada folks in Beijing when we were there. I talked to both of them.
Making trade decisions based on trade and not tariffs felt like
Well, I think all of this was actually just that. The decisions that were made in Beijing to lift the tariffs on canola seed and canola meal, those are trade-based decisions. The reason that those tariffs were on in the first place were maybe not trade-based decisions. I mean, Canada had put on a 100% tariff on EVs, which is not WTO compliant, and then it was responded politically by the government of China with a 100% tariff on, or 85% tariff on seed, as well as the 76% on meal and pulses and those sorts of things. And so I think when these tariffs went on, it was likely more political than what happened in the past week when they were removed. I have not, but I will. Yeah, and we have a First Ministers meeting, I believe, next week. I don't think I'm announcing anything if that hasn't been announced yet. I haven't been very connected, but we'll be out meeting in the next number of days. But I do talk to him regularly, and I will talk to him about this. And there is some opportunities in this, but it's going to take some discussion. There is some opportunities to move into some Canadian-built EVs in this space as well.
So talk about, you obviously have praise for the Prime Minister. In some ways it might be politically drawn to create a smaller province or the larger.
Well, that's wrong. I mean, it's a Canadian agriculture industry. There's agriculture in Manitoba. There's agriculture in Ontario. The Atlantic premiers are happy that the tariffs are removed from seafoods too. So to say that this is favoring one province over another, that's just simply not a true statement, and it shouldn't be made. This is a decision that is in the best interest of Canada. Yes, we have some work to do to build and to really do in our auto industry what happened a few decades ago when we saw foreign imports coming in to Canada, and then there was changes that were made by the federal government so that those investments had to be made in Canada, and those autos needed to be built, at least in part, in Canada. And that needs to be looked at again as the world does start to change in some of the technology that is in the auto manufacturing sector, of which we don't honestly do a lot of in this province. But I would say that the decisions that were made, whether it be in canola, pulses, seafood, those benefit Canada more broadly. It is not one province being chosen over another. Agriculture is from coast to coast, maybe not the northern coast in this province, but the seafood most certainly is important on the Atlantic coast as well.
So those canola oil tariffs, they remain in place. Of course, we also see the 25% tariffs on pork. What needs to be done to get those also removed?
need to continue being in market engaging with the Chinese government. The meal and the seed are by far and away the important ones. The meal is in the neighborhood of $500 million a year, pardon me, and very much allows our domestic crush industry to sell that meal product and continue to crush oil, of which they can find other markets. In comparison, canola oil to China last year was about $20 million, just under $20 million. So a far lower amount than the canola meal. Seed was just over $2 billion, and I would say that we have upwards potential to push that dollar figure even higher. And so the canola oil warrants some some additional discussion with the government of China. However, seed and meal were by far and away the most important to that. Dean, I don't know if you want to make a comment on that, but that's kind of the global numbers from Saskatchewan's perspective.
No, Premier, I think you pretty much nailed it. That is the importance for us is seed and meal at this time. Oil, of course, is an opportunity, but those are the main two. And it speaks to the value we find with our national organizations with in-market activities like China with the Canola Council of Canada to keep maintaining our presence in that market.
Premier, you said in September the 10-year change between the conversations between Saskatchewan and China and with Mr. Boyce there. How high level did those discussions with Saskatchewan get you, and what was your role? We saw you sitting there with Carney, but in the sense of these negotiations, nation to nation, what was Saskatchewan?
Well, I've always said, whether it be the United States of America or the government of China, when we make a trade agreement with another country, it needs to be our federal government and our prime minister that are leading, and the relevant ministers of trade and foreign affairs that are leading the discussions and ultimately signing that trade agreement. It isn't going to be, and I've said this many times, wasn't going to be President Xi and Premier Moe or any other premier standing up signing that particular trade agreement. However, the subnational level most certainly can, advocate for a strong relationship between our nation and any nation of interest as well. And I just said that associations, exporters, and others can certainly play a role in that space as well. The meetings that we partook with this particular time were with the Ministry of Commerce at two different levels, as well as the Premier, of which you referenced when I was sitting with not only the Prime Minister but a number of other ministers as well. The meetings that we partook with or took part in back in September were meetings that had not occurred in those specific areas with the Chinese government for far too long. One was with an organization called GAC, which is the General Administration of Customs in China, I think, going off memory. And the second organization was with what's also known as MOFCOM, or the Ministry of Commerce, which headed up a number of the dialogue with respect to this agreement that we were able to arrive at. Those are also the two organizations that had implemented the tariffs on whether it be the pulses, the canola meal, and the seafood, which was one tariff, and then the canola seed, which was a separate tariff. Those were the two organizations that were responsible for the tariffs, and so those were the two organizations that we had organized the initial meetings, I suppose you would say, between, at that point in time, Mr. Blois and the embassy, of which Mr. Blois then was able to, and we talked to him all throughout, be the continuity in those negotiations through to ultimately we saw the Premier the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Carney, meeting with the Premier on a couple of occasions, as well as had a sidebar, I believe, at the summit in South Korea with President Xi. So.
And when you got on a plane to China last week, did you anticipate this ending in a deal, or did you anticipate becoming more required for the job?
Always hopeful, but I've you folks in the industry, or Minister Merritt or Minister Keating might have a comment on this as well. Every country that we work with you bring a little bit different approach, and we talk about this at the post-secondary level as well. A little bit different approach in how you engage with that particular country. And I said earlier, unfortunately, Saskatchewan likely has more significant experience advocating and working through trade challenges with, let's say, China and India, are two countries that we have on multiple occasions had to not entirely take care of ourselves, but certainly be the advocate in bringing the trade challenges to light, in this case, and all too often on agricultural products, and then working with our federal government so that they can ultimately bring a resolution to the issue. And I think back to 2020 with canola oil, and I think about 5 years previous to that as well. We're still working through some pulse tariffs in the country of India, of which I think we will find our way in the next number of months, not of course to speak for the government of India in any way. So I don't think you're ever, bullish or positive that you're going to get an announcement on this particular day, but you always work towards that. And even when and as this work was happening, there wasn't a lot being communicated out of the federal or provincial governments, and I think that's very, very important to be respectful of the negotiations that are happening, in particular when it comes to negotiating with a country like China. But I don't know, any of you four have anything else to comment on that? Yeah, Dean, go ahead.
I would say that the growers of the province were watching very closely, hoping for a deal. As the largest source of farm cash receipts, canola is very important. Pulses would be right up there as well. So we were very hopeful watching this mission underway.
Yeah, Premier, we know that music is still really burning, and acknowledge that work still needs to be done. I'm curious, are you concerned that pressure from Ontario could unravel support from the federal government moving forward?
No, it's a good deal for Canada, the entirety of Canada. So no, I think this is a positive step forward from an economic perspective, from a market-based trade perspective, from an opportunity perspective on where that trade can go in dollars and jobs and opportunity moving forward. And I think with the proper conversations, I think there's a plan that we can work on when it comes to the EV industry and the auto industry as well. And I think the federal government has indicated that they're working on something in that space as we speak. So no, I think it's actually, in fairness, a model that can be built on how, as I said earlier, saying it's good to see, and I'm proud that Prime Minister Carney is raising Canada's credibility in that international sphere. I'm proud that he certainly is focusing on trade when it comes to countries like China and getting agreements like this across the line. And we hope we can find our way in a country like India as well. So I think it really is the model moving forward on how in certain sectors that are creating wealth in our nation, that we find agreements to remove current trade irritants, but in those agreements also put in the building blocks so that we can expand trade in those sectors or other sectors as well. And that's exactly what this does.
Yes, there are.
Why did we end up with a 15% tariff on canola seed when canola meal and peas was zero? Was that something the Chinese insisted on to have a tariff, or how did those talks go and how did you end up with 15%?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's two tariffs that are involved in that, and I don't know if one of you, Dean or Stu, can speak to this. I believe one is 9 and one is 6, for a total of 15. And I believe previous to the EV decision to put 100% tariffs on EVs and then the responding canola seed tariff, and I'm speaking about seed first, I think that was maybe 9 and 5. I think it was 14% or right in that neighborhood. So it essentially gets us back close to where we are, and don't quote me on those numbers, but we can find them and provide them to you. On so that was the one tariff that was under the one administration in the government of China. The second set of tariffs came, I believe, if memory serves me, a few months later, and they were on canola meal, they were on canola oil, they were on pork, and they were on seafood. And that was a 76% tariff, if I'm correct. And that one has been removed right to 0%, which is where we were before as well, aside for pork, which we still have some work to do. So I would just say that essentially what this does, it was, that's where the negotiation landed, but this is essentially where we were previous to Canada putting those 100% EV tariffs in the response from the government of China.
Yes, there are other difficulties for Canada on the international market. For example, the European Union doesn't accept most of genetically modified products. Also, other countries, some other countries doesn't have transformation facilities so it does limit the capacity to transform canola on a larger scale. What do you think the government can do to help diversify more?
Yeah, well, you know, the European Union, by not accepting for food grade, they have a number of regulations in place. You mentioned one of them. They pay more. I mean, those are non-market tariffs. When you make decisions around regulating what is coming into your country, you're going to pay more for the product that you bring in. And so Europeans pay more because of decisions that the European Union and various governments there have made around which canola they will import and which they will not import. And some of the science behind the safety of the food that we produce in this province, whether it be from a food safety perspective, whether it be from an environmental perspective, a carbon perspective, are resounding with supporting Saskatchewan agriculture as being the most environmental and ethical food that you can find on earth. And much of that research, again, is done with the association of people that are working in this particular building right here. But you point out something that I think was pointed out in a university study from a fellow from, I don't know if it's an economist or who it is, from a university in Calgary, who said that we may be a little too reliant on China and on the U.S. when it comes to our canola sales. When I addressed that in the closing of my opening remarks, they're the largest two markets in the world. They're also they pay more. They're the premium markets in the world. And so we're not in those markets by accident. Would we like to be in the EU market? Sure. And it would help us diversify. It'd likely help us diversify, some of that trade further. But as long as they have, some of the unnecessary regulations, import regulations that are in place, I guess that won't happen on the food grade. There might be opportunities, as was pointed out in this particular study, in the biofuel space. And that is maybe an opportunity for our exporters. And we have some of the largest crush plants in the world are right here in Saskatchewan, whether it be Cargill, whether it be Louis Dreyfus, whether it be Richardson. Who am I missing? ADM, Bunge have one, and Nipawin as well. And a few more being looked at or tossed around in the future as well. In the biofuel space, whether it be biofuels or renewable fuels for the Canadian space or North American or around the world, is an opportunity for the canola market moving forward. But right now we are, and that's why I think the agreement that we came to this past week is so important. We are in the largest markets, and they are the premium markets.
Just to switch gears a little bit, can you give some context and some thoughts on the new beef deal?
That's positive. That is a real positive, and I think I would hope that we could find our way in the pork space as well. There's been a lot of effort made not only in China but in other countries around pork and beef, and I think of some of the fresh pork that's being exported as well. And so it is I think for those in the beef industry, maybe not quite, but fairly significant because it wasn't flowing. As significant for a rancher as it is for a canola farmer that's happening here. And some of those discussions were happening when we were there as well. We just weren't quite at a resolution point. And I think that's an important thing, again, just to point out and recognize in the time that was there, and a credit to the federal ministers and the significance of the delegation that was there, being able to put in place those dispute working groups for businesses that are operating in China and in that region, but to commit to the ongoing conversation because there still are some, and always will be, some tariff-related challenges or non-tariff barriers, which we talked about in the European Union's case as well. So it's a positive. Well, I said earlier, what this deal does is it returns us to a space ultimately where we were from an agricultural perspective. And so with the beef announcement today, I would just say we have pork and canola oil that we have to have discussions on, continued discussions on. However, the opportunities are likely lying in some of those other industries, energy industry, and ironically, likely the EV industry as well.
Any final questions?
Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned the American market and you talked about trade deals. Where is it in their priority list to negotiate right now? Or do you see that as less of a priority?
No, it's priority. It's an unpredictable process at this point in time. We'll see what the president says this week. I think he's at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and so the negotiations. And I've been in Washington. The last time I was in Washington was just the day of the Grey Cup parade in Regina, where we met with Howard Lutnick, Secretary Lutnick, as well as Secretary Besant and Ambassador Jameson Greer from the USDA. And good conversations with each of them, but I would just say that they, whether it be some of the tariff-related conversation and action coming out of the U.S. has been pretty significant, and this, probably has indirectly or directly is impacting some of the words and the positions that Premier Ford has taken, but pretty significant when it comes to the manufacturing industry and the auto industry. And I think Ontario, in fairness, and Ontario workers are feeling that in a pretty significant way. We are as well in spaces like forestry and steel and others. So I think that is a significant priority for Canada. The Prime Minister's position has been he isn't going to sign a deal just to sign a deal. If it's a bad deal for Canada, he doesn't intend on signing that. And that has been, I think, working for us as long as the bulk of our products are compliant with USMCA that's currently in place. So we'll see where that discussion goes and where that brings us. But that is an unpredictable conversation, and it's, I think, one that's a high priority for the federal government. And I also, in fairness, would say that, as we solidify some of our trade routes in other areas of the world, it does provide us some degree of strength at that table. Yeah.
Your 10-year anniversary of the Law shooting is
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I was up there a number of times. I was advanced education minister at the time, and I had the opportunity to spend a number of days in the community of La Loche after the tragic loss of 4 individuals from that community, and had the opportunity to make some very close friends that I very much stay in touch with to this day. And so I would say to the families, first and foremost, of those that lost, whether it be family or friends, this is a time to remember. But I think it's also a time for the community as a whole in La Loche and maybe some other northern communities as well, is to look at some of the good that has come and how the community has really looked inward. And working closely, I know, with various ministries, including the Ministry of Advanced Education, and are working hard to provide more opportunities and a stronger community than maybe what was even there before. The Denny Teacher Education Program being provided, again, we're in the second tranche of that particular program that Minister Cheveldayoff continues to work on in the community. The University of Saskatchewan is offering various programming throughout the north as well. But it is a time to reflect on what was the tragic loss of 4 individuals, not just from La Loche, but from our province, and 4 Canadians. But also a time for us to reflect on some of the positives that have come about from that conversation, and those 4 won't be forgotten.
Premier Moe, you see that PHB saying their new line to Saskatchewan is going to cost $1 billion more on top of the additional escalations in cost we've seen. What is the role of the province, or is there a role of the province to see more and more big projects escalate as they get constructed?
Yeah, we've seen our schools and hospitals escalate significantly in their construction costs. And Dave, you were a minister of those. I think the university, any construction costs that you're undergoing is seeing too much, I think, at times, in fairness, escalation in costs. So this is, part of that. I think BHP has indicated, and you should ask them, about the operating environment in Saskatchewan versus other places of the world, and I think they'll be pretty bold in their statements that Saskatchewan provides a good environment for potash mine investment and mining investment more generally. It'll be $1 billion additional that will be invested here in the province of Saskatchewan over the next year, and I did take note, and I talked with BHP yesterday, I believe, with respect to this announcement, that they held steady and actually doubled down on their comments with respect to coming to market sooner rather than later, and I think they're coming to market about actually where they had originally intended to. Again, this is the largest investment BHP, the largest mining company in the world, has ever made, and it's the largest investment that's ever been made in this province as well, between phases 1 and phase 2. And I think would be, more broadly across the mining sector, we can be very proud of the investment that's being made here in the province today. When you compare it with all of the investments being made across North America in the mining space, are likely in no way, on a per capita basis for sure, but no way really even comparable to what's happening in this province. So we're very, very strong in this space, and it's something I think we as Saskatchewan residents can be very proud of, as we are providing that opportunity for mining products that we're going to use in our food and energy security today and tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Premier.
Yeah.
Our speakers will be at the front for a photo.
Yeah, my pleasure.